be without fear in the face of your enemies.
This has been a story that I've wanted to tell for a really long time.
Be brave and upright, that God may love thee.
Exploring that fracture of faith when you're pushed too far in the name of God.
Speak the truth even if it leads to your death.
What happens at that point?
Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong.
All right, welcome back to the Comics Multiverse, part of Comic Watch, and as part of that, I do a weekly Krowdfunder corner in which we kind of spotlight some of the independent creators who are doing crowdfunding projects and help them get a little more exposure and be able to fund their campaigns. And so my guest today, who I actually I guess found out about him through TikTok, which if you want to follow me on TikTok and you are really bored, you can follow me. It's the Comics Multiverse. I post occasionally, but anyway, I somehow it suggested his site, and I followed him, and he followed me back, and it turned out he writes comic book. He's writes a comic book, and he started a Kickstarter. I said, hey, why don't we talk? So let me just go ahead and bring him in, and we'll find about him and his book. How's it going?
Well, it's good. I'm glad that TikTok did something for me because I'm still new to it. So.
yeah. I'm so new to it, and I'm so horrible at it.
Yes, I'm not dancing yet. So.
Well, all these people are like, these like high production, videos, and like, I like. Stop record.
Yeah, it's just me and my beard.
Hey,
I know. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much.
So, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us, the name of your project, and then, kind of before we get into that fully, why don't you tell us about, maybe how you got into comic books and got the bug to write your own.
Yeah, so, man, I've been writing since I was a kid. So I think middle school is the first time I actually drafted out like a short story. And it was just I was in middle school, so I'm sure it was really dumb, and there's no record of it, so don't even bother trying to look for it. And then like high school angsty teen, wrote poetry and stuff. And I ended up going to college and becoming an English teacher and literature teacher and creative writing teacher. So I did all that, and around that time I started trying to formulate like my own stories, and I have a novel that I've been working on. I've released a couple of short stories. I have a short book about some biblical worship stuff that's out there, working on a couple of other things, but I wanted to I was reading something and I was like, what would happen if I just started creating my own superhero universe? And that's my first foray into writing comics. But the start of that was, as a kid, I was sick, and my parents gave me my first comic book while I was sick. And they obviously did not know what the age range for it was, because it was like Dick Tracy's Volume 3 or something. So a whole lot of violence and a whole lot of women. But that was my introduction into comics. So it gets pretty tame after that. I think the first comic book I bought myself was a Green Lantern. And I had to have been, that was probably in like late elementary school, early middle school. And I found it out at Goodwill, and I was like, I'm going to take this. And so, it was like a quarter or something. So I got it. I loved it. And then I started, reading comics a lot. So it had always been there, but I'd never thought to actually just start writing them until about 2017, I think, is when I started conceptualizing the scripts. And 2019 is when the first one published. And then we just worked our way up to where we are now.
And so, tell us about Fall of Night. You're kickstarting the third issue, so you've have. I'm going to assume if it's number three, you've had two. You have two previous issues of it.
Well, no. So Fallen Knight. This is a first issue.
Oh,
I've
sorry.
done.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
I
fine.
apologize.
No, you're fine. Yeah, this is a whole new series. It's a little bit different than anything that I've put out before. So people that do know me, they know me from Tilt and Welcome to Everville. So Tilt was a superhero story. There was one before that that's not as well known, but Tilt is the big one that I kind of released. And so the first trade's done. In fact, I just shipped those out yesterday. So that was my first trade as a comic book writer. And then I did Welcome to Everville, which is like dark fantasy and horror. So that one found an audience pretty quick. Then I did One Last Job, and that one is 2 issues in, and it's about to just be released as a full graphic novel with the final part of the story added to it, hopefully this summer. And then this I wanted to do. So One Last Job was spy thriller, kind of an homage, I guess, to Dick Tracy and growing up watching 007 and stuff. But Fall of Night, it came about because as a kid, I grew up a preacher's kid. And so history has always been fascinating to me, and religious history was always fascinating to me. I'm not Catholic, so I don't have connections to the Knights Templar or anything like that. But I mean, as a young boy, we all played knights and whatever. So this story was like, that's always been part of me. The history part has always been part of me. The faith part's always been part of me. And I wanted to explore a story of a knight who realizes that what he was doing that he thought is in the name of God is actually just utterly destroying humanity and killing people and not fulfilling what he thought that he was supposed to be doing. And so the story developed in that way. First, it was just the story of a Knight Templar. And then I realized I wanted to take him out of that element and put him somewhere else. And you could do the traditional places where Knights Templar probably had their bigger footholds, which would be anywhere around the Middle East, Europe, even like India. But then I realized that feudal Japan was happening at the exact same time, and I was like, well, that would be probably the furthest away that I could get him from his order. And so it made sense to me to move him out there, and we pick up the story 3 years after that. So he's learned the language. He just kind of hangs out in the tavern and drinks all day, and then ends up in a bar fight and kind of pulls him back into having to fight.
So you've mentioned kind of your influences. And who is I would assume the knight is the main character. And can you tell us a little bit more about him?
Yeah. So Anthony grew up knowing that he was going to become part of the order, as I'm sure a lot of kids in that world did. Young boys, they probably grew up and that was what they looked up to, was to become part of something bigger. And once it really became a thing and it got the stamp of approval by the Pope, then originally the Knights Templar, they were the protectors. They were protecting travelers between the Holy Lands. And then it got a little bit crazier, and they started becoming real warriors and stuff. And they kind of took it from there. And that's the story I wanted to explore, was what if just one of the knights, because Anthony, he's not a commander, he's not higher up or anything. But what if one of the knights started realizing that what he's witnessing occur and what he's being told to do is not in alignment with the things that he was raised to believe? Not just that the knights should be doing, but if he was really raised to believe in scripture that it doesn't even line up with that, what would that look like? And so it's really a story about a crisis of faith and deconstructing, just falling apart the things that he grew up believing in, and that takes him to where he ends up in Japan, and the exploration of him trying to figure out, is there redemption for him? Not in the eyes of God, but just in the eyes of himself. So the story itself is more of a very humanity-based story, and it's a very real feeling story. Of course, there's crazy sword scenes and all that, fighting and stuff. But at the end of the day, the story is about this guy who's struggling through these thoughts in his past and trying to drink away that and things that he did. and how is that going to affect him when something happens that kind of drags him back into like, am I going to have to pick up my sword again because now there's a new like ruthless leader in this area that's killing people, and how do I stop that, or do I not bother and just let it go? But he's a knight, so he's not going to just let it go. So he's the main character. There's also Kira. She's like secondary main character. She is an ex-samurai's daughter. She is the actual town drunk, and she gets involved with the little bar fight, and they end up getting split up by Ashujai, which is the local daimyo. He's the one that I was referencing that's starting to become a more ruthless leader. And this story, each issue, I want to explore it through viewpoints, at least parts of the story. The main story is still about Anthony, but through flashbacks and stuff, we'll see Kira's point of view of how she became who she is, and even Ashujai being the daimyo. We're going to explore like why he feels like he needs to lead the way that he's leading, and why he feels like he needs to be as ruthless. So for me, it's fun because I get to explore people's mindsets. That was what I originally was going to go to college for, was to be a psychologist, and then I just switched to teaching instead. So I get to explore brain, and that's fun.
Nice. So who are your writing influences, or who do you when you're looking for a book, is there a certain writer that you kind of gravitate towards because you enjoy their style of writing, or something, and try to incorporate that in your work?
Yeah, I mean, it comes in from all different places. Like in the comic book world, it's definitely like Neil Gaiman. Just the world building that Neil Gaiman can do is next level. And the way that he can pull you into a story as well it's always been appealing to me. I think since I first started reading him, probably as a teenager. So it's been a little while now. So he's always been there. I also liked Ted Dekker is a big one for me as well. He writes. He's in the Christian sphere, but he writes like sci-fi fantasy, but like psychological thriller stuff. And it was such a, like, growing up a preacher's kid, my access to books was like in the Christian bookstore. It wasn't like, like most people, I guess you can go to any bookstore and just whatever section you want, pick out books. Well, I wasn't like that. Not that my parents were super strict.
I grew up in an evangelical family too, so I know what you mean.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like super strict, but at the end of the day, it was part of my identity, so that is what I was gravitating towards. And so I picked out some Ted Dekker books, and I was like, this dude, like, I can't believe he's getting away with writing this kind of stuff and it being put out in a Christian bookstore, because it was like, there's some really dark stuff. And so that has always been an influence as far as like the humanity, like telling the humanity side of a story. And my all-time favorite book and also movie is The Count of Monte Cristo. So Alexander Dumas, like, he's the way that he could tell character development, huge influence. And I mean, I don't know, Count of Monte Cristo just stands on its own. So,
You're the writer. Tell us a little bit about the rest of the creative team and how you kind of, got, joined up with them.
Yeah, so that's fun. Joe DeSantos is the illustrator on this, and him and I worked together on Tilt. So Tilt issue 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now it's trade. Like, we've been working together for a minute. He was actually the first artist that was hired through Catalyst. Because the first book we put out was Paradigm, but that was done by myself and at the time the business partner of Catalyst. And then we knew after that story we needed to hire an artist to work on Tilt. And so Joe came across our radar. We teamed up. He's been doing indie comics for like 20 years or something now. And before that, he owned a shop. So like, he's always been in comics. So teamed up with him. He did a great job on Tilt. I think when we were getting ready to work on issue 3, I had side messaged him, and I was just like, man, I have this crazy story about a knight that goes AWOL, and I don't know if you'd even be interested in this style of story, but like, we should talk about it if you want to. And so immediately he was like, this sounds freaking dope, and he was in. So once it finally got around to time to create the book, we already had the artist attached. And my fiance now, she's the producer on the book. So she's the one that keeps me held back where I need to be, otherwise I would have like 400 books being worked on at the same time. So she wanted this
task, right?
Yeah, exactly. So she was the one that was like, no, this particular story is the one that you need to be telling. And so that was our green light. So she's the producer on the book, which means, for those that aren't used to producers on comic books, she's the one that's like overseeing, like I'm still doing the project managing on the creative side, but she's overseeing the actual production of the book. She's also my backup, like my eyes on it. And because I've screwed stuff up in print process before. So she's pre-press editor and all that. So she's the one that greenlit it. Thankfully, Joe was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we started working on it. And I was talking to a buddy. His name is Van Claridge. He's the letterer on the book. And he had messaged, he's been a big fan of Catalyst for years. He's always supported our stuff. And he was like, I just want to be able to do something for Catalyst. Like, what is it that I can work on? And so I had him re-letter some old stuff. And then I was like, dude, I don't want to letter anymore. Can you, like, would you be fine if I hired you on to be the letterer on this? And he came in and just is blowing not just myself away, but like, different shows that I've been on and stuff, of people that I know. They're just like, dude, like, how is this first book that he's getting released? Because he's really at that caliber. And through him, we met the colorist, whose name is Lois Lackey, someone that he's known for years and years. He was like, let her try it. And I was like, all right. So we give her a limited Japanese color palette, and she's just freaking tearing that thing apart. It's it's phenomenal. And then we also let her do. She illustrated and colored the cover for this book as well. So it's all like the same team has done everything on the book, and it's coming out fantastic. But fantastic team as well. I'd love to just keep working with them on all kinds of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it looks nice. I've been following the project since I saw that you posted it, and we've been featuring it on Comic Watch, and now I get to talk to you about it. And I backed the book, so I'm looking forward to that. So looking forward to a copy.
Yeah.
So I hearing you talk, this isn't your first Kickstarter. What lessons have you learned from previous ones you kind of applied to this one? And how is this one any different? Any different from your previous ones? Because I mean, I don't have a creative bone in my body, so I'm not going to be kickstarting anything anytime soon. But I know a lot of work goes into preparing and watching numbers and.
Yep, like stocks, just watch them. It's a lot. It's a lot. I try to tell everyone. In fact, an hour before this recording, I had to meet with somebody who's letting Joe and myself help him with his campaign page and run the campaign, because he's new to it as well, and he just needed input. So we try to make ourselves available, and I have chronicled those journeys through. I had a podcast called Beards and Comics, and it's still up everywhere. If anybody just wants to hear random babblings about the struggles of creating indie comic books. But what I've learned through Kickstarter is that every time it's not what I expect. And this particular time I launched it, and I just was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to fund. I don't know if people are going to be into this. And it hit fast, and we are funded at this point, but we keep stuff is happening in the background. Just for people that don't know, like everybody that runs Kickstarters, most of us talk. If it's comic book related, like we're all in a group together and stuff. Probably partially for therapy, but another big reason is because of what happens during these campaigns. Like one of our friends, she's had like 28 people adjust downward or cancel, and that's an insane amount. Like none of us have even heard of that, and we're just like, well, dang, now we're all nervous. So ours is hovering right over, like we're overfunding, but it's hovering. So I'm ready for the last few days where there's typically like your 20% bump, because that'll help me feel a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, what I learned is that I will wait a long time before I do another superhero campaign. They just don't do good on Kickstarter. You know, a lot of people just feel like they're superheroed out, or just trying to get them to try an indie comic, like an indie superhero, is ridiculous. But we have had good track record of when people do try Tilt, they really like it, even people that don't read superhero stuff. So I learned not to do superheroes again for a while. I also learned to go into it and not expect the worst, because people probably will find the project. And I also learned to have more fun with creating the campaign page. Like this particular one, it kind of goes from cherry blossoms to blood splatters through as you scroll down the page. And I've heard about that multiple times from multiple different people, like, hey man, that's really cool the way you laid that out. And I was like, well, you know, it's for me to have fun as well. I do graphic design, so luckily I don't have to pay somebody to do all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've also learned shipping will murder any income that you think you got. And the worst part is it's the last part. So the very last thing you do is ship everything out to the backers. And that's usually the worst financial hit, because you're like, man, you know, before that, it's like, I've packaged all these up and like, you know, we got away with this much money. And then you go pay shipping on however many packages and you're like, oh, never mind. And I think the biggest lesson I learned was Tilt, the trade. The last campaign I did before this one, it was a bad campaign. I probably shouldn't have done it when I did. A lot of stuff was happening last year in my life. And I also knew it was a superhero one, so it was already going to be a struggle. So that was already in my head. And then the thing was, it's a trade. So all those people that already backed 1, 2, 3, and 4, like they already have the whole story. So what entices them to go buy a full trade? And so, you know, even though I added a bunch of stuff in there, there's like there's 3 flash fictions. There's like a 5-page short story that somebody else did. It was a struggle the whole time. And then it did fund, which is cool, but what it funded at didn't help. Like I've had to pay out of pocket to get those shipped. And I'll make that back someday because I have the stock to go to shows and bring them. But just, I think the biggest thing for people to learn is to budget, and everyone doesn't budget. And I've been guilty of it for years, but, you know, my fiance, she is like, you know what, before you're allowed to launch this campaign, you're going to make an entire spreadsheet of every possible cost. And then you're going to make a separate section of things that you might not think about. And then we're going to look at what the numbers really are. So that has helped to give me a little bit of a clearer focus and clearer vision. So I've learned to try to base the budgeting actually around what you need for the book.
And, you know, just hearing you talk about shipping, I thought, you know, one of the things about Fall of Night, which is, I don't know, rare, I guess rare in many Kickstarters, is you're offering free shipping.
Yeah, so in the United States, I try to do that on all my campaigns. I need to start advertising it better. Somebody recently was like, that was really cool, but you didn't put it anywhere except for like on the rewards. So I did edit the page a bit and put it up at the top. But I've tried to always do free U.S. shipping and just go ahead and factor the cost into the tier. And the reason why is because the old co-owner of Catalyst, he told me about like his biggest pet peeve is going on and backing people's projects, and then you hit the thing you want, and then the next page is like plus this amount for shipping, and he would be like, man, I'll close so many tabs and just not even bother backing just because of that. And so we had talked about it for a long time, and then I've come across other people that they're the same way. It's like, you know, I thought I was paying this much, and then it's another $5 or however much for shipping, and then I was just like, well, I could probably just factor that into the price of the tier. And I guess that's another thing I'm still learning, is I probably still charge not enough for the actual physical book itself on Kickstarter, but at least people are not having to pay that extra shipping.
Now that you mentioned them, what are the tiers that you are offering for people who are considering supporting the campaign? Yeah,
so the quickest and easiest and dirtiest one is just the $5 digital tier. You get the digital download of the book. If we do hit the 3,300, which, you know, judging by what the last 3 days usually happens on Kickstarter, we might get there. If we hit 3,300, everybody's going to get just an instant digital upgrade to their digital books, and that'll be for every backer. And it'll be deluxe edition that has a whole bunch of back background stuff about the story. It'll show you the process of the pages where it's like, pencils, inks, colors, letters. And then I also plan to write like a full article on what the story meant to me and why it's important for me to tell this, because I've told people before, like, this particular story is the most important thing to me that I'm putting out. And so I was going to write a whole article based about that, and that'll be in the deluxe edition as well if we hit that. So $5, like, you could end up getting, the 22 page plus the process pages. So it'd probably be around like 48 pages or so, pretty much double that book. Pretty good for $5. And then for $12, if you're US based, we'll ship you a physical copy. And then there's a few higher tiers. There's the one where you add the t-shirt, which is the cover, and there's no lettering on it or whatever. It's just the cover image, which is really cool looking. And that one was like, I don't remember what I did, 65 or something. And then the large tiers on this one, they're more exclusive in the sense of you're getting things that other people aren't going to have access to get. I think one of them is the holographic trading card of Anthony Talon, and this is going to be the first, not Talon, Anthony, but this is going to be the first in our new look for our trading cards. I completely revamped them. The trading cards are going to have a whole new style, and it's going to be, I got to go back and do like all the old ones, but this is going to be the first one. It's going to be the only one that's in holofoil, so people will get that, and I'll sign it for them if they want. It'll also have a katana keychain that I'm going to try to sign like the blade or something. Knights Templar Creed, which will be double signed by myself and the illustrator Joe DeSantos. And something that everyone always asks me to offer, and I'm still doing it, is awful sketches by a writer. So I can't draw to save my life. Like, I might be a graphic designer, but I cannot draw. And so I let people like pick any character they want, and I actually do put effort into it. I really do. And it's still shameful. And so then I send that with it as well. And I think there might be another thing in there. And then there's a virgin copy of the, like, no lettering on the cover version of the book as well. Oh, and add-ons. I did add-ons this time, which were fun. So one of them is the Dragon Spit mug. And so Dragon Spit is the name of the sake company that provides sake in the book. And there's a mug that has the dragon logo on it. And it's like a white and black. And then the interior of the mug's red. And then there's a metal print of the cover, which I think is really cool as well. And I think that's the only add-ons I did this time.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the time to wrap up. So, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the book or the campaign that maybe I didn't, we didn't cover already? Or if you think that we're all good, if you want to kind of give a quick pitch with, where people can find, links to, your various social medias and where they can find you, and feel free to do that too.
Yeah, so Fall of the Night, it's really for anybody that's I was doing a show and they brought up a good point, and they said it was like anyone dealing with a midlife crisis. It's kind of a similar thing where it's just a complete falling apart of what you thought you knew. It's that kind of story. So anybody that goes through that kind of stuff, it'll connect with you. And like I said, this story is really about the humanity side of it. It's going to pull on heartstrings, and it has meaning behind it. It is not in any way like a preachy, it's not like a Christian book or anything. I mean, like, people's heads are getting lopped off and stuff. The point of it was to explore that crisis of faith and just like the deconstruction of it. So it's, like I said, not preachy in any way. It just happens to be about a Templar knight who obviously would have been a religious person. So if that vibes with anybody, taking a knight and shoving them into feudal Japan, which that should vibe with a lot of people, then it's a book for you. So check it out on Kickstarter. And as for like the company stuff, I have written a lot, like I mentioned throughout this. There actually is a tier I forgot. I think it's a $30 tier, and it's like 11 books. It's all the things that I've done. And there's 9 comics and 2 novellas in there as well. So check that out. And Catalyst Comics Studio is the name of the company. You can find us. I actually closed our Instagram down, so you can't find us on Instagram. You can find me on Aaron Wright stuff over on TikTok. I'm going to, at some point when this campaign's done, put a little more effort into it again. And I'm also on Facebook and YouTube. CatalystComicStudio.com is the website. I think that's important thing. But Follow Knights on Kickstarter is the most important thing.
And as of today, there's about less than a week left for the.
Yep, I think as of 8 o'clock tonight, it'll go down to 5 days. It ends next Wednesday at 8:06.
Well, we'll definitely get you one more feature on the crowdfunding corner, and I'll include this video with it in case somebody is on the fence and they need a little more pushing to, give you give themselves a nudge on whether or not they should support this book, which I'm excited for it. And I really don't get to have the funds to support every Kickstarter that I want to, but ones that look interesting, and for creators that also interest me, and then I make the I find the means to do so. So I'm glad we connected on TikTok. I'm glad we were able to connect for this interview, and in the future, whenever you have anything else that you're working on and doing the rounds, because I've seen you on the various shows. I know you've been on Travis Gibbs' show, and I haven't. I mean, I've talked to him, like over Facebook, but I haven't had a chance to interview him yet. We just haven't been able to line things up, but working on it. But again, people should definitely check out your campaign in these last couple of days and give it a try. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me. And again, you can find this and many other projects worth checking out every Saturday on comicwatch.com when we do our crowdfunding corner. So until next time, read something, support a local creator or an indie creator, and just find a book that really speaks to you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.